This is Robert Margolacci, the Mindshare Learning Report, Canada's Learning Technology e-magazine here at the Mindshare Workspace. I'm honored to have join me for a Mindshare Learning Moment podcast, the legendary Dr. Andy Hargreaves, a speaker, author, Canadian EdTech Professor of the Year award winner, exploring his new book, The Age of Identity: Who Do Our Kids Think They Are, and How Do We Help Them? Thank you for joining me this afternoon, Dr. Hargreaves.
You are very welcome, Robert. It's always a pleasure.
A little bit about Dr. Hargreaves. He's an international writer, researcher, advisor on teaching, leadership, and educational change. He's past president of the International Congress for School Effectiveness and Improvement, former advisor to the Premier of Ontario, and currently to the First Minister of Scotland. He's co-founder of the ARC Educational Project North East External Link, an initiative that brings together several educational systems and their ministers to advance humanitarian values in education. He's also the founder and director of the Shanine project at Ottawa U that was funded by LEGO, a great initiative focused on play, research around play and pedagogy and learning. And congratulations on wrapping that project up. I look forward to learning more about it. It was a $2.7 million initiative grant, LEGO Foundation grant, Canadian Playful Schools Network. Is there a report tabled that's forthcoming on that?
Yeah, the report's due at the end of January, but there's also a bunch of things already out there in the public domain. So anybody who reads EdCanNet can find a paper we co-authored with Trista Holweck and Amal Boutif and Megan Cotton-Capel on our team. There's a bit about the project in this book on the Age of Identity, and in another recent book on leadership from the middle. So we'll keep rolling these out.
Yeah.
I mean, we even made the front page of the Globe and Mail on one occasion about a year ago.
Well, fantastic. And I can't underscore enough the importance of play. I mean,
yeah,
I'm a big kid at heart. I just played, lunchtime hockey with some colleagues in Streetsville. So it's an outlet. You need play to unleash, unwind, and create it. I find that I solve other challenges while I'm playing. Your mind is processing in the background on other things too.
Well, I think, if you want to keep living, never stop thinking, never stop walking, never stop playing. And there's a good chance you'll keep on living for quite a while longer.
Well, my left winger at faculty hockey at York University in McDonald, who you might know of, retired from our team at 92. So I've got another 30 years to go, and hoping that I'll get inducted in the Old Timer Hall of Fame as we inducted him.
Right.
Very inspiring for me, but that's for another day. More importantly, congratulations on the new book. When did it hit the virtual stand, and what inspired it?
It's come out within about the last week to 10 days. Frankly, I've still got to receive my own copy. Perhaps they've held it up at the border as seditious material. I've no idea.
Oh my goodness.
Eventually it will arrive here. The book basically came out of what a lot of my work's come out of over the last 10 or 15 years, which is a collaboration with educators and really bringing my own and my colleagues' expertise to help people advance what they're thinking about and what they're working with that can benefit all kids in terms of their learning and well-being. Specifically, it comes out of collaborative work with 10 districts in Ontario here in Canada. And these districts, between about 2014, 2018, when we had a different government and a different premier, these districts were together like the province, focused on equity, of course, and excellence. And the theory of change at the provincial level and with these districts, that if you wanted to improve equity, you had to pay attention to inclusion. It was very difficult to succeed unless you felt in some way you were included and you belonged in your school. And a significant part of that was identity. And so our schools and our school districts got deep into student engagement and learning, well-being, and identity. And we've written 3 books about these in sequence, identity being the last one. The key thing about the identity book
Right.
was by the time we got to that as the third, COVID happened, and then the culture wars exploded. And so we found ourselves trying to convey to the world the things of value we learned about identity in a very positive and inclusive environment that had now been flipped upside down in a world of polarization, hate, stigmatization, extremes of left and right going at each
Mhm.
other. So part of the time to write the book was really how to take the inspiration of what we'd learned
Right.
with our districts and educators and somehow
Fascinating.
engage that with this polarized world that we're in and help us all get through it.
It is a challenge. We had one of our co-op students, teachers here, and I was asking him about the state of well-being. And it's a very large Middle Eastern population. It's one of the top performing schools in Peel, the top performing, John Fraser High School. And it's a challenging time right now
It's
because
incredibly challenging.
these kids are impacted in many ways, and with family, back in the Middle East, etc., and the tragedies that they're going through and challenges is we're living in extreme, unprecedented times right now,
Yeah.
and so you're trying to give perspective and really help support student well-being. Um, it's not an easy task.
It's extremely difficult at the moment, when the war broke out between Israel and Hamas. Uh, 2 of the people in my own center, Shaneen, the group of us created together. It's a small center, and I immediately wrote to 2 of them. One of whom is Arabic identity, so Arabic Canadian, and the other of whom is Jewish American Canadian. And I wrote to them both. And I wrote to express the sorrow of what they must each be going through, irrespective of their
Mhm.
particular opinions, and, and, and really to empathize with them for not only their own identities and the groups to whom they belong, but also we're all as educators ultimately responsible for children. And at times like this, the first casualty of war is not the truth. The first casualty of war is often children. And those are the very first people we all need to be thinking about in ways that unite our sympathies and struggles and not drive them apart with anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and so on. And for this, you can take many others: immigration versus nationalism,
Mhm.
transgender versus feminism, all of which for me are like false oppositions in lots of ways. And we have as a community to be honest where there's oppression, uh,
Mhm.
and where we have conflicting views about who are the oppressors and the oppressed, to be able as leaders to steer debate and argument and discussion in a civilized and a reasoned way, focused focused on the humanity of all of us rather than on.
Absolutely. No, well, very well said, Dr. Hargraves. And certainly learning opportunities and taking some of those challenging moments and engaging with the students and trying to help them get perspective on
Yeah,
the situation
yeah,
because it touches everyone, really,
yeah.
as a human being. Um, but talk to me about some of the messages that you're trying to get across in your through your readership, and your audience is educators, leaders,
Yeah. So
parents.
so here's a few. So the first is to understand about 4 or 5 things. One is identity is an issue for all of us. It's not just about them, the others, something we do about them or for them, or against them, even. So, as I've been in different parts of the world with my colleague Dennis Shirley. People have asked us, "Oh, what are we doing there?" I always said, "We're writing a book on identity," and no one, including my own grandchildren, regards the question, "What is your identity?" as an uninteresting question. You know,
Mhm.
when we meet people, they ask you, "Where are you from? What's your line of work?" But these are very important parts
Mhm.
of our identity. And as educators, one of our fundamental responsibilities is not only to teach literacy and math, for example, though they're hugely important, but is also to help develop young people, give a sense of who they are, where they fit in.
Mhm.
During the pandemic, this is something that teenagers lost, and it's had devastating effects on them. Who are they becoming? What do other people think of them? Where do they belong? What do they belong to? This was stolen from them in lots of ways.
Mhm.
So these things matter for all educators, but then some identities prosper more than others in the world that we are in now.
Absolutely.
And although our identities are complex, you know, we may be twins, we may be cancer survivors, we may have a special need or two, you know, or a particular gender or race or what have you. We live in a world that will often pick out one particular part of a person's identity as being their kind of master characteristic that defines them. And this often leads to stigmatization, to exclusion, to bullying, to marginalization. So we need to confront that wherever it exists, the mistreatment of our indigenous peoples in many different parts of the world, the bullying of LGBTQ students and of all other students who are, you know, perhaps slightly different from what people regard as being the mainstream. So we have to confront that. We also have to accept that people are complicated and
Mhm.
deal with the complexities. Millions of Canadians, for example, are mixed race. They're not black or white or brown or white. They're like my own grandchildren, all of them. They
Right.
are they are mixed race, and yet there's no place for them in any box we tick
Mhm.
or any curriculum materials that we will look across. So we need to get beyond the polarizations and the single
Right.
characteristics and start to embrace the complexities of who we are as a wonderful thing in lots of ways.
This is such important work. You know, you've written many books. How many books are you at now? How many?
I think I'm on 35 now,
Okay.
and one or two of them are actually quite good.
Yeah. Well, and this is probably one of your most important works in
Uh,
in in the way of the impact that and the potential.
well, we don't know the impact yet, of course,
Yeah.
but we hope it has impact. It really took some soul searching to write this book.
Hmm.
Um,
A lot of reflection on who you are and who you became.
sure. I mean, one of as we're moving ahead with it, one of our first thoughts was, who are we to write this book? You know, we're
Hmm.
too like identities exploded everywhere.
Right.
We're too old, white, and now not always in my case because I grew up in a very poor working class family, but now at
Yeah.
this point in life, like extremely privileged. Who are we to write a book about identity? And
Right.
eventually decided, well, you know, we followed our teachers with a book on well-being, we followed them with a book on engagement. Why should we cancel ourselves in terms of a book about identity? We won't bring the same things that everybody else brings. We'll
Right.
try hardest to engage with other people's identities, literatures, traditions. We sent the book out to all kinds of people, Indigenous, LGBTQ, immigrants, people with special needs, to get
Hmm.
all kinds of feedback as we were writing it. And in the end, we decided that our value is in some ways we'll bring something different and try and expand and enlarge the conversation rather than add to the existing arguments that already exist. But it took a lot of soul searching to uh,
Fascinating.
really, in some ways, be brave enough to keep going through with this project.
You know, it's about courageous leadership today and doing things that you haven't done in the past. And this, you took a leap of faith What advice would you give to educators who want to create a more inclusive environment today for their students? Because that's not an easy task.
This is, I think, one of the key things. First of all, is it's a big storm. It's a huge identity storm that has come upon us now. And what do most animals do when the storm comes? They run from it as fast as they can. They run and they hide. But the storm follows them. And so they're not all to keep on running from the storm. Soon they find themselves in the storm, and the storm is all around them. There's one exception, that's the buffalo. What the buffalo does is that the buffalo turns round and it faces the storm, which seems a preposterous thing to do. But the storm passes more quickly over the buffalo than it does over anybody else. And so, this is an indigenous learning and metaphor as well as from other traditions. So the first is don't hide, don't run, and don't stay quiet, but be courageous and come out and stand up to what will be difficult issues. It is your job as a leader to name oppression and marginalization wherever it exists in the world and in your own school. Those who are bullied is not a natural human event. It is something we need to take a stand on and have a policy on, including all those groups who suffer from bullying. And then when we get into the very difficult issues, like how do we agree on the definition of what is a woman and how people self-identify?
Mm-hmm.
And where are safe spaces for people who are in the transgender feminism debate? How do we deal with religious freedoms and respect for religious faith when there are some members of groups of religious faiths of all denominations, all three Abrahamic religions, who may be patriarchal or who may be homophobic? And so, how, as leaders in a school, do we deal with these issues? And what we have to understand is often there are no easy or automatic answers. We have to combine people's experience also with the science and with the evidence. And particularly, we have to set a rule, and we do.
Hmm. Froze up on me. Should be back in a second. Hmm. No. Well, we lost him. Well, that looks like we lost Dr. Andy Hargreaves. That's a rarity, but I'm going to thank Dr. Hargreaves and congratulate him again for being the recipient of the 8th Canadian EdTech Awards Post-Secondary Educator of the Year, visiting professor at the University of Ottawa. My name is Robert Merlacci of the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindshare.learning until you get your latest issue. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.